Hi, this is Chris Schroeder with ACO, and today we're going to give an update on the American Rescue Plan Act, otherwise known as ARPA. As many of you know, ACO's formed a committee months ago and back in March, and today we have with me the chairman of that committee, Derry Stacy with Cleveland County. So Derry, we appreciate you joining us. And on January 6th, was the big ruling on the final rule for the ARPA funds on how you could spend those funds. Previously, we had been operating on the temporary rule. But the big deal with the final rule seems to be the $10 million being used for general services. Maybe touch on that and what that means for counties.
So truly, I think this was a game changer overall. So for the majority of counties, they did not receive over $10 million. I think when we actually looked at the numbers, there were 14 counties in Oklahoma that received more than $10 million. I think nationwide, it was about 70% of the counties received less than $10 million. And with those final rules, it made it available for you to use those up to $10 million of those funds for what they call government services. So basically, that's anything you would typically use your funds for right now. So it really opens the door for those counties to use up to their $10 million worth of funds for anything they would typically use day to day in operations.
Like you said, we have 60 plus counties will be under 10 million. So for those counties in that window, 10 million plus, they could still use the 10 million for general services. But for anything additional, what would you recommend for the additional money over 10 million?
So a couple of things, as we've looked at this as a committee, obviously we've ranked those projects, some that we really feel there's no question meet all the qualifications, the guidelines as Treasury set forth, and we think there's no problem with those. There's some of those that we said, maybe we need to go back and do a little more research on or define a little bit more of how it fits the guidelines. What this gives us is the flexibility and the opportunity to take those projects that are no question, fund those projects, and then use the $10 million for the other projects as general government services. So as you go through and you look at your projects, really identify which ones of those projects, there's no question, meet the guidelines. Of those 14 counties, I think 3 of them are between the 11 and 12 million dollars, less than 12 million. So really it's not going to be much of an issue for them. The good thing is, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about this as well, the state auditor's office is still willing to work with the counties, particularly those that fall in that range, to look at their projects, assess them, and determine if they feel they fall within the Treasury guidelines as well. So they're still willing to work with us. Cleveland County is one of those that falls within that range. So it's real important that we still work with the state auditor's office in doing that.
Totally agree. Another question I get a lot is dealing with premium pay for county employees. Premium pay is allowed. It was allowed in the temporary rule. It's allowed in the final rule. What are maybe some ways counties, if they are wanting to do that, can approach that?
So there's a couple of different options there, I think. Number one is to continue just as we've discussed as premium pay. Make sure that you meet the guidelines, that you've gone back and identified those people that actually worked during the pandemic, that you can outline the hours that they work that qualify, know how much you can give them, follow the same guidelines as Treasury set forth, and really base your premium pay on those guidelines. I think there's another opportunity, and that is a couple of years ago we got, I think it was House Bill 3804, I believe it was, but it allows for bonus or merit pay based on evaluations performance. And so I don't know how many counties are taking advantage of that and using that, but it allows you to pay up to 10% of their annual salary in a bonus based on a performance evaluation. That is a general government service. So if you were to take those dollars that were assigned as general government service and you were to assign those to individuals based on and follows state statute, obviously, to the T. But if you were able to do that, you could use those government service dollars for that. So I think there's a couple of different ways to do it and go at it. I think with us already having a statute in place, it may be easier to use those government service dollars for that.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. We mentioned earlier our committee we put together back in March. Obviously, you're the chairman. We also have a few other commissioners on there: Jason Keenholz, Noble County; Heath Dobovoni, Kingfisher County; and Bryce Bohut with Jefferson County. But forming that committee, we thought it would be a good idea to invite the auditor's office in. So State Auditor and Inspector Cindy Bird and Cheryl Wilson with her staff have also been attending those monthly meetings with us. And they've provided some resources on their website. You touched on a little bit earlier, but maybe go in depth a little more on what services they're providing on the website and kind of how helpful they've been through this process.
Absolutely, but before we go there, I want to touch on that committee for a minute. You know, I've been involved in a lot of different things in ACO, and without sounding too sappy, I got to say this is probably the most enjoyable and productive committee that I've been a part of. Those other commissioners that have served on this committee, I truly enjoyed my time working with them. And I think what was unique to me and what I really appreciated about it is that there were no politics involved. It made no difference on the size of your county or the population. And it didn't matter whether you're a rural or urban county. Truly, I think when we sat down and we worked on these things and we discussed the issues, it was what's best for all the counties in Oklahoma. How do we solve these issues and problems, and how do we work together? And I think that's exactly what ACO should be. And I think sometimes we get caught up in the other sides of it, and it was so refreshing and so nice to see on this committee everybody working together. I got to tell you, I really hate to see that this committee is going to disband, because I really enjoyed that time and really enjoyed working with those guys. And any time in the future, I'd love to work with them or for them on something, because they were engaged, they were part of it, they spent time afterwards doing their homework. They just did an excellent job as being members of this committee. So I appreciate them very much and the work that they put into it. When we first discussed this committee, I reached out to Cindy Bird and said, hey, this is what we're talking about, and would you guys have any interest in being involved in that? And she, from the very beginning, said, I'm in. What can I do? I want to help the counties. I want us to look good as a whole from a county perspective in how we deal with these dollars and how we spend them. Couldn't have asked for a better response from her and the state auditor's office. And Cheryl Wilson has been great and has been at every meeting as well. From the very beginning, we opened it up to the rest of the counties to submit questions and to ask things that pertain to their counties individually, so that we could discuss them as a group with the auditor's office and with us. I think that was a huge benefit. I know not only myself, but other committee members got lots of calls from commissioners saying, hey, I know you guys are doing something or on this, and we're thinking about this. What do you think? And then we would bring that back to the committee and have a discussion. That's exactly how this is supposed to work. That's exactly how this association is supposed to work. So that was really cool to see it happen. The auditor's office has gone absolutely above and beyond. They not only have put out information on a regular basis for us and been involved in our committee meetings, they've put together a task force within their own office that deals directly with these funds. And so anything that comes in goes to this group, they review it, and then they give their consideration as to whether or not they think it's an eligible project. And that's probably the biggest thing that they've done, is give us the ability to submit our projects ahead of time so that they can give feedback and give their approval on whether or not they think it meets the guidelines before we actually go out and do it and then are audited on it. So that has been phenomenal. They're still willing to work with us, even with this change in the rules. So I would highly recommend that if you're doing specific projects, if you have any question, even with it being under government services, you still forward it to them and get that feedback from them. Particularly if it's over that $10 million, I would keep the same process in place, that you submit to them, get their feedback and their approval on those projects before you move forward. But they've been great through this whole project.
I totally agree. And as Derry said, we get lots of calls. The auditor's website, I think, is one of the greatest resources. If you can get an answer and use that documentation and put that in your file folder whenever you're spending those ARPA funds. So ACO's also created a website with a lot of the ARPA information. We got all the links to NACO, the U.S. Treasury. We've got the final rule on there, the overview of the final rule, as well as our committee members and kind of the things we've done. So if you're needing more information, you can visit the ACO website at okaco.com. And Derry, before we kind of wrap this up, is there anything else you would like to relay to commissioners, or anything we missed you want to touch on?
I think you brought it up, and that's something we really hadn't discussed that much, but I think NACO was very beneficial and helpful in this as well. So from the very beginning, they really pushed on behalf of the counties to see that these dollars could be spent wisely, how the counties need to use the dollars. So sometimes the feds think what's best for us, and that's not necessarily the case. And so it was good to have somebody as an advocate for us on a federal level that was really trying to help write the rules so that we could most beneficially use these dollars. So I appreciate their help as well. I know you've been in contact with them and been on a lot of their calls through this process, and I appreciate that. And I want to say thank you to ACO too. I mean, you guys have been great in helping put all this together, and that's what we're about.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely, we're here to help commissioners. Well, Derry, thank you for joining us. Thanks for being a resource for commissioners. Commissioners, feel free, reach out to me. I'm sure Derry is open to any calls, but if you got any questions, contact us. And thanks for watching the ACO ARPA update.